освободительное движение Союза Советских Социалистических Республик.
The Soviet of Ministers of the USSR, State Committee of the State of Emergency, the state military political body of a special meeting with expanded powers. Date, May 28, 2023. To General Secretary of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary Council of the United Nations, President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, His Excellency Csaba Károlyi. Note: we hereby express our respect to you and inform you of the following historical fact. The great sovereign country of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics in the period from 1949 to 1945 waged a protective and liberation war against the world aggressor of the international criminal community, based on an extremist, neo-fascist terrorist ideology, directed against the sovereignties of all countries of the world and producing genocide of all clans, tribes, and nations of the world, destroying all rights, freedom of choice, and self-determination in the development of the future of all countries and nations of the world. Nazi Germany was the center of the world aggression and terrorism. In their monstrous crimes and perverted anti-human ambitions, the fascists have repeatedly suppressed such a definition as tyranny in the process of seizing independent European countries, building concentration camps and carrying out mass genocide of the people of the world. After fascist Germany captured almost all independent European countries in a fairly short period of time, committing massacres of civilians and systematically producing a mass genocide of allied mankind as a terrorist of European countries, on June 22, 1941, at exactly 4 a.m. Moscow time, the world aggressor represented by fascist Germany attacked the multinational sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. From 1941 to 1945, the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, is great multinational, united, sovereign Soviet people defended the sovereign territory and sovereign citizens of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and later carried out the liberation of all those taken and captured by Nazi European countries. More than 56 million sovereign citizens of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, were criminally killed by world aggressors. Among them, more than 8 million military men of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics died heroically, defending and liberating the great motherland, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and the occupied European countries. On the night of May from 7 to 8, 1945, Nazi Germany signed an act of unconditional surrender of the armed terrorist forces of the world aggressor, represented by the Nazi Germany to the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Thereby the great sovereign country is the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics and its great, united, sovereign Soviet people won the great world victory over the world aggressor and proclaimed peace in the world. We remind you that the so-called allies of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics joined the great liberator country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, only at the end of the 4-year ruthless war, when the superiority and inevitable victory of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics became obvious to everyone. In 1945, the great leader of the Soviet people, General Secretary of the CPSU Central Committee and Supreme Commander of the Liberation Soviet Army and Navy of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin, received the world title of Generalissimo. The great country of the winner and liberator in the Second World War, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, is the initiator and general founder of the United Nations as an international platform for discussion and decision-making in the areas between clans, tribes, nations and countries of the world through diplomacy and achievement of international agreements. The main goals of the United Nations were to resolve any problems and emerging conflicts at the international level through diplomatic peaceful means, to prevent wars, and to make decisions to suppress future alleged occurrences of international aggression. Also, the United Nations organization was obliged to observe and protect the rights and freedom of people, clans, tribes, nations, and countries that are members of the United Nations. One of the main symbols of international relations in the world was the lofty thesis, peace to world. proclaimed by the general founder of the United Nations, namely the Great Sovereign Country, the Union of Socialist Republics. We hereby remind you that the several countries are included in the founding treaty establishing the United Nations. The Great Sovereign Country, the winner of the Second World War, the Union of Socialist Republics, has the largest share in the founding treaty and the maximum number of seats, namely 5 seats of a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council with the right to declare veto. The remaining 6 seats of permanent members of the United Nations Security Council were distributed among countries such as the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the United States of America, the Republic of Taiwan, as later proclaimed the PRC, and France. We hereby remind you that when signing the Constituent Agreement of the United Nations regarding the contribution of the authorized capital of the United Nations to its organization and development, absolutely all the money in the form of gold in the Charter of the United Nations was contributed by the Great Sovereign Country, the Union of Socialist Republics, in the amount of the initial authorized capital of the yen of 3,500 tons, and in total the Union of Socialist Republics transferred a little less than 20,000 tons of gold to the authorized capital of the United Nations. Countries such as the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the People's Republic of China, the United States of America, and France didn't contribute their share as the charter capital as founding members of the United Nations. The Union of Socialist Republics contributed the entire amount to the authorized capital of the United Nations for all the founders, and the remaining founders represented by the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the People's Republic of China, the United States of America, and France assumed obligations to repay the debt to contribute their shares to the authorized capital to Union of Socialist Republics within 50 years with very large interest. Therefore, the above countries had to fulfill their obligations to contribute their shares in the authorized capital of the following agreement of the United Nations to the Union of Socialist Republics until 24th of October 1995. We repeat that the sovereign country is the Union of Socialist Republics, being the general founder of the United Nations, made a 100% contribution to the founding capital of the United Nations, agreeing to accept obligations from the partner countries, co-founders of the United Nations. The partner countries such as the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the People's Republic of China, the United States of America, and France, as a binding legal act for the payment of their shares in the authorized capital of the United Nations to the Union of Socialist Republics. We hereby confirm that since the establishment of the United Nations until today, the founding countries of the United Nations represented by the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the People's Republic of China, the United States of America, and France haven't yet fulfilled their obligations to contribute to the statutory fund of the United Nations to the Union of Socialist Republics. By the right of the sovereign, on the basis of the norms of international law, on the basis of the above fact, on the failure to fulfill unconditional obligations by the country's co-founders, the United Nations represented by the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the People's Republic of China, the United States of America, and France, the Great Sovereign Country, the Union of Socialist Republics, declares the legal fact of absolute possession as the general founder of the entire nations and all its structural divisions. The Great Sovereign Country, the Union of Socialist Republics, the general founder and absolute owner of the entire United Nations and all structural divisions, prohibits the presence, participation, and holding any discussion and making any decisions in the entire United Nations system, namely in all committees and all secretariats of the United Nations, in the Security Council of the United Nations, and in General Assembly of the United Nations, as well as all missions of the United Nations and in all initiatives of the United Nations for countries that have not fulfilled their unconditional obligations to contribute its authorized shares to the United Nations. The ban is imposed on such countries as the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the People's Republic of China, the United States of America, France, Israel, and their representatives, as well as on countries that support neo-fascist ideology. From the moment of signing this note, the Security Council of the United Nations is fully controlled by the general founder and the absolute owner of the United Nations and all structural divisions, the Great Southern Country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, represented by the Supreme State Authority of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the State Committee on the State of Emergency of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, headed by the chairman of the SCSE of the USSR Army, Boris Khachimovich Satushiev, Commissioner of the SCSE of the USSR, Lieutenant General Arseniy Stanislavovich Chernomorov, as Secretary of the SCSE of the USSR, Major General Irina Alekseevna Gorbacheva. This note establishes a ban on the use of any types of assets and funds generated by the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics in international trusts, international funds, including funds intended to combat the pandemic and any other world problems. This note has the supreme legal status as the Supreme Legislative Sovereign Act of the Great Southern Country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Chairman of the State Emergency Committee, B.H. Satushiev. Commissioner of the State Emergency Committee, A.S. Chernomorov. Secretary of the State Emergency Committee, I. Gorbacheva. Om.
Народно-освободительное движение Союза Советских Социалистических Республик.